Picture two people starting the same job on the same day. Same title, same salary, same office. Fast forward 3 years, one of them is stressed, behind on bills, and dreading Monday morning. The other one just quietly put in their 2 weeks notice, not because they found something better, but because they saved enough to take 6 months off and figure out what they actually want. Same starting point, completely different destination. What separated them wasn't a side hustle or a windfall. It wasn't luck. It was a set of decisions so small and so consistent that neither person even noticed they were making them until the results showed up. Today, I want to walk you through the financial habits that quietly build or quietly destroy your future. Let's start with the idea that changed how I think about every dollar I've ever spent. Money doesn't disappear, it converts. When you spend money, you're not losing it, you're trading it for something. Sometimes that trade is excellent: food, medicine, experiences that genuinely shape you. Sometimes that trade is terrible: a subscription you forgot about, a gadget you used twice, a status purchase that impressed nobody for longer than a week. The question worth asking before every transaction isn't, can I afford this? That question is almost useless. It only asks whether the number in your account is big enough. It doesn't ask whether the trade is worth it. The better question is, what am I converting this money into, and is that worth more to me than what else this money could become? $100 converted into index funds today might be $400 or $500 in 20 years. $100 converted into a dinner you barely remember is $100 converted into a memory that fades within a week. Neither is automatically wrong, but knowing you're making a conversion, not just spending, changes the weight of the decision entirely. Most financial problems aren't math problems, they're identity problems. Here's what I mean. People don't usually overspend because they can't do arithmetic. They overspend because they've built an identity that requires a certain level of consumption to feel real. They think of themselves as someone who drives a certain kind of car, someone who wears certain brands, someone who lives in a certain kind of apartment, someone who takes a certain kind of vacation. And then income has to chase identity. Every raise gets absorbed by the next upgrade that the identity demands. Earning more never fixes anything because the identity expands faster than the income. The people who build wealth aren't necessarily earning more. They've just quietly decided that their identity doesn't require external props. Their self-image isn't stored in their possessions. It's stored somewhere harder to see and much harder to take away. Habit 1. Spend on experiences before objects, but be honest about which is which. Research into well-being consistently finds that experiences contribute more to lasting happiness than objects do. You adopt to objects fast. The experiences are different. They become stories. They connect you to people. They create the texture of a life remembered. But here's the catch that nobody mentions. Some purchases people label as experiences are really just expensive objects in disguise. Buying a boat because you love being on the water is an object purchase. Renting a boat for a weekend with people you love is an experience purchase. The distinction matters enormously because the object version carries the full ongoing weight of ownership, while the experience version delivers the good part and leaves. Before you make a major purchase, ask yourself whether you're actually buying the experience or buying the object that you hope will eventually deliver the experience. They're rarely the same. Habit 2. Know the difference between a fixed cost and a variable cost, and be terrified of fixed costs. Every fixed cost you add to your life is a minimum wage you must now earn every single month just to stay even. Your rent, your car payment, your subscriptions, your loan minimums, these are claims on your future income before you've even earned it. Variable costs are different. They flex with your circumstances. A bad month means fewer restaurant meals, not a missed payment. A job loss means tightening some choices, not losing your home. The financially resilient keep their fixed costs brutally low relative to income. They pay themselves in options rather than obligations. Every time you're about to add a new fixed cost, a subscription, a lease, a payment plan, ask yourself what your life looks like if your income drops 30% next year. If the answer is catastrophic, you've added too much weight. Habit 3. The cost of delay is almost always larger than the cost of the purchase. I know that sounds backwards after everything I just said, but this applies to the one category almost everyone gets backwards: investing. People delay investing because the amount feels too small to matter. They'll start when they have more. They'll start when things settle down. They'll start when they understand it better. Meanwhile, the cost of each month's delay is compounding against them silently. $10,000 invested at 25 grows to somewhere around $70,000 to $80,000 by 65. The same $10,000 invested at 35 might grow to $30,000 or $40,000. You don't lose a few $1,000s by waiting 10 years. You lose the difference between those two numbers, which is often more than you spent on everything you bought during the delay combined. Starting small is not a failure. Starting late is the actual cost. A $50 monthly contribution begun at 22 will outperform a $200 monthly contribution begun at 32. The math is unambiguous and merciless. Habit 4. Budget around your peaks, not your average. Most people build a budget for their average month. Then an above-average expense arrives: a car repair, a medical bill, a flight home for a family event, and the whole system collapses. The financially stable treat irregular expenses as fixed costs distributed across 12 months. They know roughly what their car will cost to maintain annually and set aside a 12th of that every month. Same for medical expenses, same for travel, same for home repairs. This isn't a complex system, it's a mental shift. Irregular doesn't mean unexpected. If you drive a car, maintenance will happen. If you have a body, medical expenses will happen. When you fund these categories monthly, large bills stop being emergencies. They become withdrawals from accounts you've already been filling. Habit 5. Automate the decision before you make the mistake. The worst time to make financial decisions is when the money is available and you can see it. When income lands in your checking account and sits there, visible and accessible, the psychological pressure to spend it is constant. Every want registers as a possibility rather than a choice. The solution is structural, not motivational. Move money before you can touch it. On payday, before you've had a chance to think about it, an automatic transfer sends your savings contribution somewhere you won't instinctually reach. This doesn't require discipline in the moment because there is no moment. The decision was made once, in advance, when you were thinking clearly. Then it executes itself indefinitely. Most people fail at saving because they wait to save what's left after spending. Nothing is ever left. Automate the opposite sequence and the results reverse. Habit 6. Treat your future self like a person you actually care about. This one sounds soft. It isn't. The single biggest driver of poor financial decisions is what behavioral economists call present bias, the tendency to value today's comfort far more than tomorrow's security, even when the rational math doesn't support it. You buy the thing now because right now feels vivid and real. The consequences arrive later and feel abstract and far away. But your future self will be just as real as you are today. They'll feel stress just as acutely. They'll feel relief just as genuinely. The difference is that by the time they arrive, the decisions will have already been made by the person you are today. People who build financial security tend to have an unusually strong relationship with their future self. They make decisions today as if they're responsible for someone they love, because in the most literal sense, they are. Habit 7. Let your first raise work for you before you let yourself see it. Every time your income increases, there's a window. It lasts about 30 to 60 days. Within that window, your lifestyle hasn't adjusted yet. Your expenses are still calibrated to your previous income. If you can intercept that raise before your lifestyle absorbs it, before your brain recalibrates normal, you can permanently shift your savings rate without ever feeling the sacrifice. Most people let the raise land. They feel good. They upgrade something. The upgrade becomes normal. The new normal requires the new income to sustain. Nothing was actually gained. Intercept the raise. Automate the additional contribution immediately. Let your lifestyle stay exactly where it was for another full year. You won't miss what you never adjusted to, but your future self will notice the difference, compounding in ways that will genuinely astonish them. Habit 8. Use the math to end arguments with your emotions. Impulse spending isn't primarily about greed. It's almost always about emotion. Stress relief, reward, boredom, social anxiety. You feel the urge to spend impulsively, pause long enough to run the actual numbers, not to punish yourself, but to make the invisible visible. A $90 monthly subscription you barely use is over $1,000 a year. Over a decade, including what that money could have been doing instead, it's closer to $15,000 or $20,000. That's not a subscription, that's a significant life choice. Once you see the real number, the emotional pull weakens. You can address the actual need, the stress, the boredom, the desire for reward, with something that doesn't compound against you for the next 20 years. Habit 9. Measure your progress by your gap, not your balance. Most people track their finances by looking at their bank balance. That number tells you almost nothing useful. A balance of $10,000 means completely different things depending on whether your monthly expenses are $2,000 or $8,000. The same number represents 5 months of security in the first case and 6 weeks in the second. The number that matters is your gap, the distance between what comes in and what goes out. A wide gap means options, flexibility, and compounding in your direction. A narrow gap means fragility, stress, and any disruption becomes a crisis. You can widen the gap from either end. Earn more, or spend less. But spending less is faster, more controllable, and has no ceiling. There is a ceiling on how much time you can work. There is no floor on how lean and deliberate your spending can become once you decide that your freedom is worth more than your comfort. Habit 10. Stop optimizing for the appearance of wealth and start optimizing for the function of it. The appearance of wealth costs money, constantly. These are expensive signals sent to people who are probably too busy sending their own signals to notice yours. The function of wealth is different. The function is choice, security, the ability to say no when no is the right answer, the ability to say yes when yes is the right answer, the ability to absorb shocks without being destroyed by them. The appearance and the function are not just different things, they actively compete with each other. Every dollar spent performing wealth is a dollar not building it. The people who look the richest and the people who are the richest are, in many cases, opposite groups. Minimalists and disciplined savers often look unremarkable. Their cars are fine, not impressive. Their homes are comfortable, not aspirational. Their wardrobes are adequate, not aspirational. But their options are extraordinary. They could leave, they could rest, they could pivot, they could wait. They could absorb whatever comes without being cracked open by it. That is what wealth actually feels like from the inside. Not a number, not a possession, a quality of freedom that no purchase has ever successfully imitated. The habits I've described aren't complicated. None of them require exceptional income, unusual discipline, or a personality you don't have. They require clarity about what you actually want your money to do, and the willingness to structure your life around that clarity. The gap between where you are and where you want to be financially is almost never an income problem. It's almost always a conversion problem. You're converting your money into things that don't hold their value, into obligations that restrict your future, into appearances that impress nobody for long. Change what you're converting your money into, and the trajectory changes with it. The person who ends up financially free isn't smarter. They're not luckier. They just spent a few years making slightly different decisions than everyone around them, and then the math did the rest.